Welcome back to The Common Historian, where history meets the supernatural in the most fascinating ways. Today, we are taking you to one of California's most haunting historical landmarks, Preston Castle in Ione, California, rising majestically from the Sierra foothills. This imposing Romanesque Revival fortress has watched over Amador County for over 130 years, serving as both an architectural marvel and a place where tragedy and triumph intertwined, where young lives were forever changed, and where the past refuses to stay buried. Built in 1894 as the Preston School of Industry, this was America's progressive answer to judicial justice, housing troubled youth, including future country music singer Merle Haggard. Mission lies darker truths in the brutal 1950 murder of beloved head housekeeper Anna Corbin, a crime that remains unsolved to this day. Now a California historical landmark and one of the most paranormally active locations in the American West, Preston Castle has been featured on Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters, transforming each October into one of California's premier haunted attractions. Joining us today is Melissa Bandy Zelico, lead investigator of the paranormal team at Preston Castle, and a dedicated 14-year volunteer veteran of Preston Castle. So we're going to get ready to go behind the scenes of this remarkable piece of American history and its most haunting secrets. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Can you tell our audience about Preston Castle and its significance as both a historical landmark and a paranormal destination?
Preston Castle was the very first boys' prison. It was the establishment of the California Youth Authority. Boys who were criminals were previously sent to Folsom State Prison or San Quentin, which are, maximum security prisons. They were housed with adult offenders, which, Senator Preston decided instead of throwing away the key, let's try to rehabilitate these kids. The Preston Castle had everything from your common little thief to we had serial killers that were there.
Oh,
Merle Haggard was one of them. Rory Calhoun, who was a popular actor. We've had, you name it, we've had them all. She's now over 130 years old, and we are working to restore her.
that's very nice. I always like to, hear that some of these historical places are being restored. So many of them aren't being restored. So,
Yes, yes.
what drew you to become involved with Preston Castle, and what role do you play in the organization? I know I touched on it briefly.
Well, I wear many hats as far as Preston Castle goes. When I was in junior high, we lived in Ione, and I remember riding the bus. And my mom told me that's where the bad boys went. She never specified what happened there. I remember riding on the school bus and trying to imagine who lived there, what it looked like inside. Fast forward now, I'm an adult. My friend said, "Hey, you want to come and be one of my actors in The Haunt?" I said, "Heck yeah." But the castle, I remember going there the first time 14 years ago. This will be my 14th haunt, and just in awe, in complete awe, not only of the damage inside, but also the fact that she's 130 years old and still standing. It's sad and remarkable at the same time. As far as my hats, I am a historical docent. I also am the leader of the Preston Castle Paranormal team, as well as volunteer coordinator for the haunt this year. And I'm also in charge of makeup for the haunt for all the actors. I wear lots of hats. I do whatever is needed of me.
I imagine a lot to be done to get ready each year for the haunt and
Uh,
generally overall.
this is the first year that I won't be building. Normally, I build the second floor,
Oh,
and then I'm in charge of the whole second floor. This year, I've had to hang up my hat for building. We've got a whole brand new crew coming in. We're real excited to have them. Bunch of new builders, new designers, and we'll see what happens. We're ready.
mm, very nice. So, for viewers unfamiliar with Preston Castle's history, can you walk us through its origins as the Preston School of Industry and its transformation over the years?
Yeah. Preston Castle was the establishment of the California Youth Authority. Built in 1894, the first seven boys came, I believe it was June 2nd, 1894. Within a year, they had over 170 boys there. They went from a one room dorm in the basement where they had 50 to 75 to 100 boys at a time to company B, which was upstairs, also just one big room, 75 to 100 boys. There were thousands and thousands of boys that went through those doors. They were educated, they were taught trades, and to help them on when they to help them, they operated on a merit system, and escapes were very common.
I could imagine that, boys that age would probably, want to try to escape quite a bit.
There were also boys that never committed a crime. Their only crime was that their parents couldn't afford to feed them. And in those days, you could drop your son off and he would become a ward of the state. So there were boys, little boys, like 7 and 8, 9-year olds that were just victim of circumstance, and here they were, and they were housed with these older boys, and bad things happened.
It's sad that,
It wasn't until around the 1920s or so that they decided, hey, maybe we should get these little boys, maybe we should segregate them and put them in their own dorm away from these bigger boys. So for a lot of the time it was open, the little boys were subject to the bigger boys. You could just let your imagination run wild with that one, because a lot of
yeah,
the men that were here do not talk about their time here because
yeah.
a
Oh,
lot
I'd
of them had
imagine.
really bad experiences.
Preston Castle is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and designated as California Historical Landmark 867. What makes this architecture, the architecture and location so historically significant?
Well, besides the fact it was the establishment of the California Youth Authority, like I said, it's a 130-year-old building and she's still standing. We don't build anything today that we're going to see in 130 years, and it cost $160,000 to build her in 1894. You can't even buy a house anywhere today for that, You can barely buy an apartment for that here in California now. And it's really cool when you're on your way, you're coming down this little country highway, and all of a sudden you come around the bend, and there's this big, huge, red, beautiful building just on top of this mountain. It's really a sight to see, and people are always in awe. People get excited and they drive up to see what it is. And it's a really cool place.
Oh, I'd imagine. I've seen pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Never been there.
Book a tour, come to Paranormal Night or come to do a day tour. You won't regret it.
The castle operated as a reform school from 1894 to 1960. What was daily life like for the boys who lived there, and how does the history influence your preservation efforts today?
We try our best to maintain the historical integrity. When you're restoring a building of this age, the first project they did when I first started was gutters. You can't just go to Home Depot and buy gutters. They have to be historically accurate. Plus, you have to also maintain today's codes and standards along with this building that's 130 years old. So, it's not easy. For the boys, they operated in a military style. They went to work to school. There were two sessions. You either went to school in the morning or the afternoon. And if you were not at school, you were doing whatever your trade was. You could be making shoes, bricks, you name it, they did it. Baking just depended on what you were most likely to do once you reached the outside world. They were completely self sufficient. They had a farm, cows, pigs, and chickens, and they made their own clothes and shoes. And there was always something to be learned there. Most of the time, the castle was open. They lived on a silent system. Boys were not allowed to talk to each other because these boys were criminals. So they figured if you were talking, you were concocting something. Whether it was right or wrong, I don't know, but most of the time they were not allowed to talk to each other. They were very strict and operated on a merit system. You could lose merits for pouting, for cursing. I wish I had the list because there's some of them that are really crazy. So yeah, it's for if you were to talk bad in church or when you were standing in line or marching in form, you'd lose like 100 merits.
Wow. Yeah, I guess, we've came a long way since then, I think,
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I don't think they use the merit system anymore. I don't know how you could because kids today are
yeah.
much different than kids then. But in order to get out of Preston Castle, most of the time they had to have between 2,500 and 3,000 merits to get out. So
Oh,
most boys, their stay was about 2.5 years.
the Preston Castle Foundation has been working to preserve and rehabilitate the site since 2001. What's the biggest challenges that they're, facing in maintaining a 130-year-old building?
Well, there's two major factors. One is money. We're a registered nonprofit, and we rely solely on donations and the events that we host at the castle. Our biggest event of the year brings in, about $300,000 to $400,000 right around there each year. We put through about 1,500 people every night for 6 nights.
Wow.
So yeah. So, trying to, maintain, earn the money, donations come in, but it's going to take 50 to $60 million to completely restore this castle.
Wow.
So the $400,000 is a lot of money to you and me, but when you put it up against 50 million, it's just change.
Yeah.
So I probably won't see her restored to her former glory in my lifetime. Maybe my grandchildren might, but I would hope that they will. And then there's also the fact that we have to maintain the integrity of, it has to be historically accurate, the gutters, the parking lot, whatever we do. They just put the porches back on. They had them rebuilt and that by itself will cost almost $300,000. They're done with phase one. Now they have to begin phase two.
Sounds like you have to take little sections and just
They they
get them
pick
done.
Yeah, they do little things and then they pick one big project each year. And yeah, like I said, the porches are a two-phase project. They've been gone since at least 1960 or so. Level that they removed years before they closed. As far as the normal decks, they're beautiful and I can't wait to see them finished.
Yes. That'll be a major accomplishment when you
Yeah.
guys get those all finished. How do you balance preserving kind of that authentic character of the castle while still making it safe and accessible for modern visitors?
There's a lot of rooms that have chains or barriers that you can't go into because there's no floors. You know, we monitor them closely. There's docents all over. Personally, with the paranormal team, we we watch them like hawks because if somebody, you always got that one guy that's not going to listen. But that one guy could fall through the floor, and I'm not going to save him. He's going to stay there until the fire department gets here, and then he's got to answer the fire marshal because fire marshal not going to be happy. um, I'm not going in after him. If you're dumb enough to go around a barrier, but we do all we can. We work very closely with the fire department, the fire marshal especially. He has the ability to shut us down, and we know that. So we listen to everything he says. If he tells us to do something, we do it immediately. We don't argue with him. Safety is always number one. The castle is not handicap accessible. If you're in a wheelchair, we could get you in and out of the basement easily, but that's all you're going to see because it's all stairs. If you
Yeah,
got weak
I
legs,
imagine.
it's not a place if you got weak legs,
Yeah,
or a broken leg or something. Lots and lots and lots of stairs. They had elevators for a short time, but the elevators took so long that it was faster to use the stairs. The boys used the elevators to cause distractions. They would start them on fire when they wanted to try to escape.
those,
Eventually, they took out the elevator and they made the elevator shafts closets, which they are now today. But yeah, it's not handicap accessible. But for you and me,
yeah,
those
could be.
stairs kill me. At least up to 1,000 breast. But yeah.
Good exercise, though.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If you want it or not. If you want to see the castle, then you need to do the stairs. One of the most haunting aspects of Preston Castle's history is the unsolved 1950 murder of head housekeeper Anna Corbin. Can you tell us about Anna and what happened on that February night?
Anna Corbin was a very beloved member of the staff. We tend to shy away from her murder because She does have family that is still in the area. What I can tell you is that she walked in on two boys in the shower in a compromising position, and they were afraid she was going to tell on them. They chased her, bludgeoned her, wrapped her in a rug, and put her in the storage closet. She was found by another housekeeper in a ward. One of the boys did come forward and tell what happened. Then he recanted his story. So the boy they believe actually did the murder was Eugene Monroe. Eugene Monroe was tried 3 times and he acquitted each time. Even though they had the confession of the other boy and the other boy specifically named him, he was still got off. Fast forward, Eugene gets out and commits another murder, very similar to the one with Anna. He was a serial killer, yet he was never convicted of them. His first murder was done when he was just a teenager before he came to Preston Castle.
So he had already killed prior. Despite the 3 trials, his murder was never officially solved. How does this kind of unsolved mystery continue to impact the castle's atmosphere and paranormal activity?
People always want to know about Anna Corbin. Anna Corbin's not there. She's
Oh,
passed on. She's not at the castle. Eugene comes through quite a bit and he tells us his story. She was not the only housekeeper that they killed either. People don't know
oh,
that there was one before her. They
oh,
also
I didn't
killed,
know that either.
yeah, they also killed an agricultural teacher. The first housekeeper, Bessie, I forget what her last name was, but she was killed by 4 boys who had started the elevator shaft on fire. She'd caught them. They bludgeoned her, locked her in the closet, took keys and everything. She didn't die in the castle. She died in the hospital from her injuries. The agriculture teacher was at the new Preston, which sits below us. When they closed the castle, they opened the new boys youth authority, and that sits down below the castle.
Okay.
And it closed in 2011. So they're both closed now.
Is there other tragic events that occurred during its operational years that contributes to the haunted reputation?
There was a lot of abuse that went on. There's a whooping post in the back. And if you were to act up, they would handcuff you to the whooping post. It's like a ring on the wall. The shop teacher had the best swing. So he would whoop you. The theory was that all the boys, they would line the boys up in the windows, up in the dorm from Company B, and have everybody witnessing. And then they would hear your screams because they would echo throughout the valley. Because,
Oh,
the castle's at the very top. There was abuse from other boys, there was abuse from guards. Depending on which superintendent was there, some of them were real bad guys, some of them not so bad. If you were to escape, they paid the townspeople to bring you back. They would pay them.
oh, they would make
There's
sure they wouldn't be hiding them or anything.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it was a bad thing. On the bottom of their shoe, there was a V pattern. The theory was that if you escaped, they could follow your footprints. They wore pink nightshirts so that if you escaped in the night, what kind of man wears a pink nightshirt? In
Yeah.
those days, they didn't. So, you would obviously, you were in a pink nightshirt, you must be from the castle or the school at that time. We don't know the exact number of people that died there. A lot of people don't realize that the infirmary at the castle was the hospital for the entire area. If you were a farmer and you hurt yourself plowing your field, it was much faster to go to the school than it was to get on your horse and ride into Jackson. You could bleed to death by the time you got to Jackson.
Yeah.
So we do know that more people that were not associated with the castle died there than people that were. There was one superintendent who had a 1-year-old baby who died there. Sometimes we hear babies crying. This castle holds so many secrets in 130 years. She has a lot of secrets that we will never know.
Yeah.
Just because the records get lost over time or destroyed, we'll never know everything that happened there. There's just no way.
Yes, I think I read that they destroyed a lot of the records from early on.
Yeah, yeah. Luckily, there's the librarian, John Lafferty. He's written several books on his time there, but he wasn't there the entire time. A lot of it's just lost to history. We can only imagine. And then we have the spirits that come through and tell us their story. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
We get to know who they are. They get to know us quite a bit, and they know who we are. 2 weeks ago in Company B, they called my name 4 times on our equipment.
They know.
One of my docents He's now the president of the foundation. They love him. They're always calling Aaron. He was last year in a car accident. We didn't know about it. And we were doing a paranormal night and it kept saying, Aaron, Aaron, Aaron. And then it was telling us about an accident. Well, I called Aaron the next day and said, are you okay? And he said, no, I've been in a car accident.
Wow.
We found out from the spirits at the castle that he was in a car accident before he actually told us. And he was in the
Wow.
hospital. He was seriously injured. And yeah, so that was that was a good one.
Yeah, that's very interesting that they were able to tell you guys that prior.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
So, how do you approach sharing these darker historical aspects with visitors while remaining respectful to the real people who lived and died there?
Well, like during the haunt, we never allow all of the actors know that you're supposed to make up your own character. You cannot, you can, if you want to look like a housekeeper, you cannot be Anna, period. Anna, anybody that was there and alive, actually a ward or an employee or something, you cannot be. You have to come up with your own characters. As far as the guests, I approach it myself because I don't want to put ideas in their head. If you're gonna have a paranormal night and you're gonna tell them, oh, you're gonna tell them about this ghost and that ghost, you're putting the thought in their head and they're gonna think, oh, that must be George or whatever. I don't like to influence them. I want them to have their own experiences. We don't use names and stuff usually. We try to steer far away from that. There were so many boys there that it's impossible to know all of them.
And I find a lot of the paranormal investigating teams either like to know the stuff or they don't. A
Yeah.
lot of them I've talked to don't like to know anything about the location when they go in.
Because you want to be
Yeah,
influenced. If I tell you we have shadow people, everything you see is going to be a shadow,
yeah.
you
It's
know?
gonna they have that
Exactly.
predetermined in their head that that's what they're gonna be looking for, or,
Exactly. Exactly. And everybody that whispers is going to be a disembodied voice.
yeah. Preston Castle has been featured on some major paranormal shows. What kind of supernatural activity do visitors and investigators commonly report?
Oh boy, I could go on forever over this one. I have photos of apparitions and photos that some of my docents have taken also. Some of them will knock your socks off. We have everything from shadow figures to full blown apparitions to disembodied voices. People get their hair tugged, especially young girls, little girls too. It's not uncommon for somebody to be standing still and hear a voice in their ear and actually feel the breath on their skin. You name it, we get it. There's all kinds of stuff.
The full
The whole
array of.
shebang, we got it all. Yes.
Can you share any personal paranormal experiences that you've had while working at the castle or compelling evidence that you've captured? I know you just said that you had a bunch of different things, but any kind of personal story?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a whole plethora of them. One of my favorite stories is 2 years ago. There was a couple who were visiting from Orange County. They'd never had an experience. They just thought it would be kind of cool to visit the castle and come to a paranormal night. They'd never had an experience, never been to a paranormal night. So we were on the second floor. I was standing next to the staircase that comes up from the dining room, and the wife and the husband were standing against the wall on the other side of the hall from me. And there's a room down there at the very end, and it used to have a light that flashed on and off. So we're standing there and we're talking about that room, and all of a sudden the light flashes on. And I look at the wife and I said, did you see that? And her eyes are as big as saucers, and she just shakes her head, yes. The light flashes on a second time, and I look at her and she just shook her head, yes. The third time the light flashed on, there was nothing there, and she ran like her feet were on fire. She was so shaken up, and the husband had turned to walk the other way. He had turned to go back with the rest of the group. And I told him, wait, don't leave. Let's try to recreate this to make sure it wasn't one of
What?
us. This could be the coolest thing I've ever seen here. Our shadows were behind us. So it wasn't one of us because we couldn't get our shadows to go in front of us. We tried everything. So it was not one of the three of us. There was a shadow figure in the corner standing there looking at us while we were looking at it.
Wow.
After she had recomposed herself, her husband and another gentleman that was there, and the other gentleman had a video camera. So they had walked back down to that area because she was like, I have to go down there again. So they actually caught on the camera a big black orb, and it did like a figure eight and then went down the stairs.
Wow.
A big, it was like big
Big.
black orb. So that was really cool. I've watched paint cans tip over and roll. Nobody was near them. I've had things thrown at me. They called my name all the time. One year I chased a lady on the second floor. I chased her down to the staircase, literally running, chasing her. On my way back, there's the stairs that go up to the third floor. And there were two girls at the bottom of the staircase and one actually on the stairs. So I look, and at the same time, the two girls, they look and they start screaming. The three of us witnessed feet going up the stairs. And I knew that the door was locked because I had locked it myself for the next floor
Oh,
up. Because that's where we used to keep our stuff for the our decorations and stuff. So these girls are freaking out. And of course, we call security and they found a locked door. There was nobody up there.
so
And
there's no way anyone could have got in there.
the girl at the steps, I said, who went up those stairs? And she said, nobody. I've been standing here. Nobody went up those stairs. So the two girls that were freaking out, we had to find another spot for them because they refused to go upstairs after that.
Oh, well, I don't know if I
Refused.
blame them. I don't know if
Yeah. I love that kind of stuff. Aaron came 3 years ago and he was a complete non-believer. He said, it's all a bunch of nonsense. So him and I were working on the second floor and I left him up there by himself. He was on a ladder taking some stuff down off the wall. I'd gone to the basement to get some curtains and I come back up and he's walking towards me and he's like, white as a ghost. And I said, are you okay? When I left, he saw a curtain that I had hung kind of like blue and there was no wind. So it was in the hallway, the curtain, and the windows are far and they were closed. He went to check it out because he said it looked like somebody had come through them. He goes to check it out. The room on the left, I was making a doll room. And I have this rocking horse over at the castle, and the thing's like 90 pounds. It's all in, it doesn't rock on its own. He goes past that room, he looks, and that rocking horse is rocking, like full blown rocking on its own. And I was so happy for him. I said, congratulations, you just had your first experience. Are you a believer now? And he said, oh, yeah. Now he's one of the docents.
Yeah.
Now he's one of the docents on my team. So, yeah.
So, you offer various paranormal tours. I think there's like the Paranormal 101 nights to full overnight investigations. But what can people expect on these experiences?
One thing I always tell people is that I cannot promise you a paranormal experience. There's a lot of factors that come into play. Just one sour character can ruin it for everybody. Most of the time, there's enough activity there that we get activity most of the time. There are times that we don't, but most of the time we do. Paranormal 101, that's basically for your rookies. People that have never investigated, they don't know what they're doing. They come in, we let them use our equipment, we show them what to do and how to do it. Are convinced that what you see Zach Bagans do in his show is how it goes. They don't realize that paranormal investigating is a lot of waiting around. A lot of waiting around, trying to get them to interact with you, trying this and trying that. You got to try a lot of things. And I always tell people, if all else fails, sit and have a conversation amongst yourselves. Because when you're not paying attention to them, they want your attention. And then your equipment will start going off around you. It's a great time. 9 out of 10 times people leave with a smile on their face.
Yeah, I can imagine. I imagine, a lot of people have watched these shows on TV and they're just seeing the highlights.
Yeah. The
Uh,
highlights or the fakeries sometimes.
but yeah, there's a lot more kind of
A lot
waiting
of drama, a
around.
lot of Hollywood in some of those shows.
Yes. So, kind of going into, I know that we touched on it a little bit. How do you maintain the integrity of the paranormal investigations while ensuring the visitor's safety in the building with the structural challenges?
Like I said, there's a lot of rooms that have wires over the doors. You can't get into them. They're like screwed shut, chains, barriers. You're going to go beyond the barrier. I'm not going in after you. I'm calling, emergency personnel. The police are going to come. You're going to be arrested. But really, we don't have many problems with people not obeying, the safety. I tell them, stay with your docents. We know our way around there in the dark. I'm not afraid to walk in the dark there. Stick with us. Always use flashlights on stairs. I've only had to kick one couple out recently because they weren't following safety protocols. So most of the people that come are great and they listen to what we're telling them. It could be a dangerous place. If you're walking around or if you're running, if you get startled, don't run. That's the worst thing you can do because you don't know where you're going. We do. Just stay with your dose. I always tell them if you need to grab my arm, you can. I'll hug you if you need support.
Every October, Preston Castle transforms into one of California's premier haunted attractions. How did the haunt begin, and what makes it unique compared to other Halloween experiences?
The haunt began as a fundraiser to earn money to restore the castle. This year is the 15th year that we've been hosting the haunt. Through the years, I've watched it grow from, I was just telling somebody, I look back at those pictures and it's like, what were we thinking? But it's transformed into this huge production now. We're now a professional haunt, all volunteer. None of us get paid for it, but it's very rewarding. When you have somebody come in there and they get so scared that they pee your pants, that's a great reward. That's what we look forward to.
Yeah,
But we don't use your typical cheesy things. We stick with the time period. You're not going to find complete blood, guts, and gore. A little bit, but it's blood, guts, and gore just is gross. It's not scary. We've learned what works without giving too much away. We know what works now. Jump scares are great.
creating scares with a
Mhm.
generally haunted historical building must present unique opportunities and challenges. How do you design the haunt experience to complement the castle's natural atmosphere?
Our actors are dressed to the time period. We require them that their costume has to be between 1894 and 1920s, 30s, right around there, when the castle would have been open and operating. We've got lots of kid actors. People see kids and they are just scared. They're more afraid of the kids than the adults. You know what works and what doesn't when you've done it for a while. We don't go overboard with blood, guts, and gore. A creepy little kid with some makeup singing. When my daughter, she's 20 now, but when she was little, she used to be in this hallway and she would just skip and singing Ring Around the Rosies. People used to run from her. And she was like 8 or 9. She was little. And people used to, oh no, oh no. And she used to just run after the people in the hallway back and forth. That's all she did all night. And she loved every second of it. You know, the little tiny kids, we've got like 3 and 4 year olds that people are scared to death of. So
Yeah,
lots
because I
of
imagine,
kids is always good for us. And we just have them dress as wards. Most of the time they just have to stand there and look at people and people are scared of them.
and I imagine that some people know something about the castle going in. So they psych themselves out before they even, before you guys actually scare them.
And you know what? In the dark, they can't tell if you're a boy or a girl. You're just a ward. So you have the right jump scares with the right actor doing the right role and have it be a kid. That's the perfect recipe right there. You just have to be creative with the jump scares, and we change it up every year. If we have one thing that works, we may do variations of it for a couple of years, but then we take it out for 3 or 4 years. We'll bring it back eventually. We have diehards that come every year and have since the beginning, and they don't want to see the same show every time. So we're
No.
constantly having to reinvent ourselves every year and come up with new things. The wheel's always rolling. We don't just come up with this overnight. We work all year long, the entire year around. As soon as one haunt's done, we're working on the next one. So
Yeah. The 2025 haunt is currently in development. Without giving away too much, too many secrets, what can visitors expect from this year's experience?
last year we did a circus thing. That was a one and done. We got no more circus. We're going back to our roots. In fact, this year, along with Aaron and Jim Bennett, who's our safety officer, the three of us are the executive team. This is my first time running the show. So I'm excited. I'm nervous, but I'm excited. We've got a new group of builders coming in. We've got all our plans turned in. We've got some good things coming, some good scares coming. So, yeah, you don't want to miss this one. Number
Oh,
15, 15 years of screens.
oh, it sounds like going to be a doozy this year.
Yeah, we hope so.
How does Preston Castle serve the local community beyond tourism, and what roles does it play in preserving kind of Amador County's history?
The castle is very much a part of Amador County history. We maintain very close relationships with many of the businesses, almost all of them in the town. It's very, very, very teeny tiny town. And really we work with the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts do a lot of work for us and with us, and maintaining those relationships is what's important, especially in a small town. They all love the castle as much as the castle loves them. A lot of them are regular volunteers of ours. Our biggest thing is maintaining the relationships that we have with the town. And, we participate in the parades. We give back to them as much as they give back to us. So
Kind of looking ahead, what's your long-term goals for Preston Castle, and how do you envision the site evolving while maintaining the historical integrity and paranormal significance?
well, like I said, it's going to take 50 to $60 million to restore this castle. I'm not going to see it in my lifetime. But my plan is to, while I'm here, to do as much as I can. Just continue what I'm doing and, do the best we can at restoring and bringing in more money. We're always looking for new events to host, new ways that we can actually go out and earn money. Nobody gives it to us. We host weddings, reunions, you name it, we do it all.
I do have just a couple of bonus questions, if you don't mind. I was curious, for someone planning their first visit to Preston Castle, what would you recommend? A historical tour, paranormal investigation, or waiting for the haunt season?
We have people that come from out of town. I suggest coming on a Saturday, doing the day tour, and at nighttime, doing the paranormal tour. People like to look. You can't see everything in the dark. We do give you a tour of the castle, but it's a quick tour. But you want to be able to come and look and see and there's so much that you miss, being in the dark. But yeah, that's what I would do is take the day tour and then come back that night, go eat lunch or go eat your dinner or whatever, and then come back that night and do the paranormal.
Yeah, kind of see both aspects.
Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of people do that. They want to see
Yeah,
where they're, kind of get their bearings about them so they know where they're at.
yeah.
So
For me, that would be my perfect thing. I like the history, but I like the paranormal,
yeah.
learning the history during the day and then paranormal at night.
People that take the day tour and then the paranormal tour often say they could feel things during the daytime. Preston
Oh,
Castle is always alive. We build during the daytime. This is California in the month of September. So we get there like 8 o'clock in the morning, but we're gone by 4 because upstairs in Company B, it can get up to 126 degrees in that room. It gets hot. So we start the morning upstairs and work our way down to where it's cooler. There's no air, there's nothing in that castle. So by 4 o'clock, you can't even breathe in there. So we cut it off.
yeah. What's the most important thing you want people to understand about Preston Castle when they leave?
We want you to understand the historical significance. It was a place of great sorrow. A lot of kids left here. Some left better off, disciplined and everything. A lot of them were abused. Some of them were not, but a lot of them had really bad experiences here. A lot of them went on to their adult lives. Merle Haggard, one of them, did write about it a little bit, but he was not one to discuss it because he didn't want to relive it. From what I understand, Rory Calhoun was the same way, as were a lot of the men that lived here. It was well intended, but when you have that many criminals, just like with the maximum security prisons, some of those boys were not able to be rehabilitated. Some of them were just bad seeds. It's sad that the few good boys that may have just slipped up once or twice, kids that picked a flower on their neighbor's yard and were called a thief, were sent there. You could get caught smoking a cigarette. Now there was another boys' prison in Whittier, which is in Southern California. If you couldn't adjust to Whittier, then they would send you to Preston and vice versa. It was just a place nobody wanted to be at. It was better than being at San Quentin or Folsom, I'm sure, but
Oh,
it wasn't a pleasant place
yeah,
at all.
yeah. How can our audience support the Preston Castle Foundation's preservation efforts if they would like to?
Well, we always take donations. You could go to the website, prestoncastle.org. You can make donations. You can support us by attending the haunt or doing a day tour or paranormal tour. If you do a paranormal tour, you'll meet me there. You'll probably see me running around like a chicken without a head, but I'll be there just attending the events. If you're in the area, Come on by. It's a great place. Of course, we will be shut down for the rest of the year, but we'll be open in the spring. We close down. It takes us the entire month of September to build the haunt. And then every Friday and Saturday of the month of October is the haunt. And then we clean up the haunt and then we go into the Christmas. We have a Christmas event at Christmas time. And then we're closed for the rest of the winter. I usually restart my paranormal tours in March
Okay.
through August. We just finished the last of our paranormal tours last weekend for the year.
Thank you for answering all my questions today.
My pleasure.
Um, Preston Castle truly represents everything we love here at the Common Historian. Rich, complex history intertwined with compelling supernatural mysteries that continue to unfold. From its origins as a progressive reform school to its current status as a premier paranormal investigation site, Preston Castle stands as a testament of how we can honor difficult histories while embracing the mysteries they leave behind. And the dedication of Melissa and the Preston Castle Foundation to preserve this architectural gem while sharing both its triumphs and tragedies is truly inspiring. Melissa, thank you for sharing not just the
Thanks for having
history
me.
of Preston Castle, but your passion for keeping these important stories alive through your 14 years of dedicated volunteer work in paranormal investigations. For listeners planning to visit, remember that you can experience this remarkable location through historical tours, paranormal investigation, and of course, the legendary annual haunt each October. The links to the Preston Castle Foundation and upcoming events can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for joining us on another journey into the shadows of history. And remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share this episode with fellow history and paranormal fans. Until next time, keep exploring these mysteries that history leaves behind. This is the Common Historian, and we'll see you next time.